What up, roomies? And tonight on Neighbors. Tonight's guest is someone who operates in the intersection of intuition, energy, and consciousness. We're joined by Soph Stafford, an energy alchemist and an Akashic Record practitioner who helps people realign their energy, connect with their guides, and tap into deeper levels of awareness. If you ever wonder what energy work actually is, what the Akashic Records really mean, or whether intuition can be trained, tonight's conversation is going to stretch your perspective in the very best way. Soph, welcome to Neighbors.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you on. I've been so excited for this interview. You do not know because I've had an experience with the Akashic Records, and it's a funny story how I actually learned about it. And also, I was really curious to know what an energy alchemist was because we know about what regular alchemy is and all that. So I definitely wanted to know what a energy alchemist is in that front. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, to answer that question, first off, an energy alchemist is me. It's really a term that I grappled with for a long time to try to explain the work that I do because I hadn't really found any other definitions that really fitted the way that I hold space for clients. And so I landed on Energy Alchemist because essentially what I do is I work in the fifth dimensional space. So working with the higher self or the
Yeah.
soul or the spirit, depending on what language you like to use. I work with that part of ourselves that we can't necessarily feel or see at all times, but it's always there. And so I work to shift energetic blocks or restrictions or lower energies that people might be experiencing. And that's why I call it energy alchemy.
Okay. So basically, for roomies that are still stuck on like the traditional meaning of alchemist, she basically transfigures your energy and takes away your blocks and helps you reach your higher self and awaken you a little bit.
Exactly.
Is
Yeah, exactly.
am I on the
Yeah, it
right
connects you
story?
more fully with source. Yeah.
All right, that's what's up. And yet again, thank you for being on. So, as we go on, for people meeting you for the first time, right? What what actually what actually led you down the path of energy work and the Akashic Records?
Yeah, so energy work is something that I've always done in some capacity ever since I was fairly young.
Mhm.
I had a near death experience when I was 13.
Ooh,
And from that, I realized that I guess I could tap into people energetically and sense things and work intuitively. It took me a really long time to be comfortable with that. So I was very covert about doing that sort of work. I would only do it if people asked
yeah,
specifically. And then a few years ago, I was working in, a kind of corporate job,
yeah.
working in a university. And on my way home from work, I was in a car accident. So a
Ooh,
lady hit the back of my car. So it was a literal kick up the butt from the universe, right?
mm,
She hit me really hard. And I got out of the car to check and see if she was okay. We were both a little shaken up, and she just fell apart. She said, "I'm so sorry. I can't believe I've done this to you. I'm so, so sorry. I don't know what to do now. I've never had a car accident." And so I just said,
ooh,
"Okay, well, first of all, is there anyone we can call? Do you want to let someone know what's happened? Do you have insurance details? Let's exchange details."
of course.
And I just kind of supported her in that moment. And I got home that night and I was pretty shaken up. And I got a text message from her and she said, "I am so sorry for hitting you and I'm so sorry for ruining your car. But if I had to hit anyone, I'm really glad it was you because you were so kind to me in that moment."
No,
And I
because
thought, well, if
no,
I
like
can show up kind,
no, because most people in that situation would have gotten out their car, raging mad, and probably would have cursed her out and whatnot. Instead, you showed her kindness. So it was like, even though, and it was a good experience. I don't. It's not a good experience that you guys got into a car accident. Of course not. But in term, it was a good experience for her because it was like, since that was her first incident, meeting somebody that was so kind was like, okay, cool, we're past this hurdle now. Now I know what to do if it happens again, and I have to be prepared for that person not to be as kind as you were.
Yeah, that's it. And I realized that that was kind of a stressful moment for me, right? Like, no one
Yeah,
expects just to be driving home from work and be in a nasty car wreck. But what that meant to me was that even when I'm struggling with something, I can still show up authentically as myself, and I can support other people to tap into that aspect of themselves as well. And so it really reframed my whole perspective on how I was showing up in life, because kind of being undercover
yeah,
about how I connected energetically with people wasn't working anymore. And I kept getting louder and louder nudges. Someone called it spiritual breadcrumbs. It's just kind
yeah.
of like these little things were just peppering away for me. And it got to the point where I just realized I actually need to lean into this. And I'm so glad I have.
No, I believe it. I believe that your work is something that right now, the way society is and the way the human consciousness is moving, we definitely need people like yourself to help those rise up more. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
agreed.
I'm happy to be able to provide a platform where people could come listen and educate themselves on this, and especially with somebody like you who's who's going to teach us a lot today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So what was like you said that you had a NDE when you were 13, and that's kind of when you like kicked off like the spiritual connection, you would say? Do you uh,
Yeah, I would say maybe even before that.
okay. So how long
Mm.
have you felt connected?
When I was about 9 years old, I had what I call a near death experience,
Yeah.
where I'd been walking up to the local school to meet my friends to go rollerblading, and I was about 9. And my house was right near the school. It was just down the road, and I was walking along, and I had to cross a very small side street. It was just a little T intersection, and there was a car waiting to turn. So I just stood on the curb waiting for that car to go. And as that car started to turn, another car came speeding up the hill and T-boned that car.
Oh
And that
no.
car started spinning.
Mm.
And in that moment, I had the clearest voice just come through in a very commanding tone saying, "Take 2 steps back, Sophie." And so I just obeyed without thinking and just took my 2 steps back. And when the car that had been spinning came to a halt, it was physically touching me.
Oh.
And so if I hadn't have taken the 2 steps back, I absolutely would have been hit by this car.
Oh
And
no.
it felt so normal to hear that voice. And it felt so normal to just listen to it and follow it. And so for me, that made me realize that maybe I was getting messages that other people don't routinely hear,
Yeah.
but it also made me aware that that's unusual. And so I kept it quite close to me. I didn't go and tell people, "Hey, someone told me to take 2 steps backwards," or anything like that. I just realized that I was kind of different.
All right, that's what's up. That's dope.
Hmm.
When you introduce yourself as an energy alchemist, right? What does it act how do you like break that down for like regular people so they could like understand what you actually do with like people's energies and all that?
Yeah. So energy alchemy works quite nicely with working in the Akashic Records. So the focus of energy alchemy is essentially your current energetic state, where you are right now, what's going on for you today. And so most people, when they come to me, their biggest clue is that something's out of balance, is that they just don't quite feel like themselves. They can't put a label on it. They can't really say when it started or when it, really started to impact them. It's just, I know something's not right. And it's not medical. I'm not a doctor. I don't work on the body. I'm
Yeah.
not a naturopath. I don't prescribe herbs or anything like that. I very much just work in that fifth dimensional space. And so it's usually people just know something's a little off. And so the way I structure my sessions is probably a little bit different to other practitioners. I would meet with someone just like this
Yeah.
online because I'm a virtual medium, so I can meet virtually. And we have a conversation, and I really ask you intuitive questions about what's been going on for you, what you're noticing, what's coming up. And then I actually don't do any energetic work during that session. Once the session comes to a close, that's when I tap in and start doing the energetic work, because I like to work with the person's conscious mind and have a conversation. But in terms of the energetics, I want to just work with the higher self, because the higher self absolutely knows the answers and knows what's going on. So I tap in to that person's higher self, and I work at the speed that is comfortable for that person. So some people want their energy to shift really quickly. They want a rapid result.
Yeah.
Other people just are a little shy. They like to take their time. And so I absolutely work at the speed that is comfortable for the higher self, because I don't ever want to send someone into any kind of healing crisis. But essentially, I ask the higher self what's going on, and it might tell me that there's an attached lost soul, or there's an auric leak, or there's a block or restriction that's stopping the flow of energy or creating some discomfort for that person. And so we just gently release it at a pace that feels safe for the higher self. And then I get back together with that person, just like this, over a virtual meeting, and tell them
Yeah.
what I've found, and often give them some homework to do so that they can keep their energetic integrity intact.
Oh, that's so cool. So you essentially work at the speed of the higher self, not the actual person, right? Because I may
Correct.
say that I want, my healing to be done rapidly, but my higher self is probably saying, I need a little bit of time. I need to, really work through this stuff. So it's like, even though I might be saying one thing, my higher self is really the one dictating how the healing is going to go.
Yeah, you've got it. Exactly. So there's been plenty of times when I've met with a client and they say, I just want to feel better. I just want this done. It'll happen
Yeah.
really quickly because I want to release everything. And then I'll tap into the higher self, and the higher self sitting in a garden kind of going, um, well, I've got these attachments, but I'm not ready to let go of this, this, and this yet. So we've got to start over here. And so
Yeah.
that's what I do. I'm always guided by the higher self.
That's so cool. So like when you're doing your work, right? What do like people, well, if you could give me like a little sample, right? What do people's
Mhm.
higher selves are usually attached to? Is it like grief? Or is it like past childhood trauma? Is it something even from like their past life?
Yeah, look, it can vary a lot. Often, what I see is I will see things like energetic attachments. So, lost souls can be attached, negative entities can be attached. We often see cords. So, in relationships, we usually set up a cord, it's like a connection with the other soul. And most of the time, that's inherently positive. Sometimes it can flip into being a drainer. So it could be that you have an ex partner that you've
Yeah.
had a fairly amicable breakup with, but something just feels a bit off. And when we have an energetic cord, we have you and we have that person. And when that person pulls on the cord, either intentionally or unintentionally, we usually go with it. So we're quite influenced by it. So it's never positive for our higher self. So it's about asking permission to cut that cord and make sure that it feels safe and okay for the higher self to just release that attachment to that other person. But yeah, my work varies. The biggest lesson I've had to learn is that there is absolutely no one size fits all. So I am working off intuition. So there's things that have common symptoms, but I've never had two clients that have presented with exactly the same thing. It's always different for each soul.
No, I would see that because everybody's journey is a little different, you know what I mean? Even, present
Exactly.
life, past life, future life, they're all gonna be a little different, and that soul's journey is gonna go through its ups and downs and take on its traumas and its lessons differently from everyone else. And that's just like
Yeah.
common law of the universe, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, spot on.
give me 1 second. All right. So most people here are, how is energy alchemy similar to like regular alchemy in a way? Because we were saying that most people cling on to the sense of like transmutation, going changing lead to gold, the philosopher's stone. So like how is how can you like compare the two and kind of like make it similar but enough easy enough for like somebody who's not into like the spiritual work could understand?
I My philosophy is that I really try and make woo-woo things practical.
Yeah.
So when I'm working energetically with someone, the alchemy is in taking them from one state of being into taking them into a more desired state of being. So there's current state, and then there's where the higher self actually wants to be. And so that's creating alignment. And it could be that they need a really big download of source energy because they're just really disconnected from their own source. Or it could be that they've got lower energies attached that we need to kind of let go of so that they can sit in their own current state. Um, it really, really varies from person to person. But what's really most important to me is to take something that can feel scary or overwhelming or too big to understand and make it practical, because there's no sense working with someone energetically for it not to make shifts in their day-to-day life. So what I'm really looking for when I'm looking for a client is to actually affect how they're living, what their quality is. um, I think sometimes we can get bogged down in sort of the spiritual terminology, and we can often outsource. There's a lot of
Yeah.
kind of guruism out there in the spiritual community,
Yeah.
which sometimes can be harmful. And so, people can often experience a bit of, I guess, spiritual superiority from practitioners where they say, well, if you just meditated 5 hours a day, or if you just had this particular crystal, or if you just follow this particular
Course.
methodology, things would get better for you. And that's not really how I work. I'm really interested in practical ways that you can integrate your fifth energy into your third dimensional body. So, for some people, their homework might actually be something as simple as when they make their coffee in the morning, instead of just doing it on autopilot, I want them to stop and think about it and actually be kind of pouring some positive energy into their cup. And then before they take a sip, actually holding their mug and feeling the warmth and smelling the smell, and just really allowing that moment to be something that is nice for them. And sometimes that can actually make such a change for people, because we don't realize how much the speed at which we live can
Yeah.
impact our own energetic balances.
No, I completely get that since like excuse me, since modern society we're now used to like instant gratification or getting like information extremely quick and extremely rapid. Even in romance we expect everything to go like extremely fast, and in life too. So like slowing down and just enjoying that moment like with the cup of coffee could help, I would say, ground you a little bit more and kind of like let you enjoy life at a slower rate than what life is like right now, I would say, if that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
And the higher self always sets cool homework. So it's never something that's hard or unachievable.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's this message that you have to live in a yurt to be at peace with yourself. And for me, the higher self is often just saying something as simple as, I just want you to notice the color yellow. I want you to really notice the color yellow. When you walk out on the street, I want you to notice where you see yellow. And the more you notice yellow, you'll notice yellow more. And as you begin to notice yellow, you realize that you're noticing yellow. And it puts you into a really peaceful state. it's a mindfulness thing without having to work at being mindful, because yellow will start to pop up for you. If
Yeah.
I tell you not to think about the color yellow, yellow will be right there. And you walk out your door and you'll see someone carrying a yellow bunch of flowers, or wearing a yellow coat, or carrying a yellow umbrella, and it will start to notice. And it's your higher self's way of helping you to just ground and just be. And that is the best energetic balance you can have.
That's so awesome. Do you think that a lot of people now don't like take the time to like ground themselves and kind of like enjoy the moment of life? Because life is truly, for all intents purposes, life is truly something beyond imagination. You know what I mean? Because a person's
Yeah.
perception could make the crappiest situation a great lesson. You know what I mean? And we also have the ability to, come from nothing and make and conquer the world. So life is
Yeah.
extremely phenomenal. Do you feel that like a lot of people don't take the time just to like slow it down a second and just be like, this is cool, this is life. Let me notice the beauty in it.
And people don't know they need to. They don't realize that that's what the higher self ultimately wants. And I think a really great way to understand how important perspective is in when we're addressing ourselves through life is, you'll see if you watch the news. Let's say there's
Yeah,
been a wildfire and there's two neighbors and they live across the street from each other, and both houses burned down. And they'll interview the first neighbor and they'll say, "We're devastated. We have lost everything. It's all gone. It's all just a pile of ashes, and we've lost everything that's important to us. We'll never get it back."
yeah,
That's the way they will feel about that trauma forever. And then they go to the guy across the road and he goes, "Oh, we're so lucky. The house burnt down, but we all got out alive and all our
yeah.
pets are safe. And we have the clothes on our back and we have people who love us. And we are going to rebuild our house and it will be stronger and amazing. And we just feel so blessed right now." That will lock in for them, and they will start, their unconscious mind will start just searching for the gratitude in that moment. Whereas the other person who suffered the trauma will just be so connected to that moment of trauma that it will really, really sit with them. And how that looks energetically is often the highest self won't even be standing upright. It will just be sitting down, head in hands. And so where I work is I help the higher self stand back up again and have a think about what it wants, and then
Yeah.
help communicate that to the conscious mind.
Okay, I feel you. Do you feel that when people have that like optimistic versus pessimistic kind of outlook, that their life opportunities kind of like close and open for them?
Mm, yeah, absolutely. We can't see possibilities that we can't see. And so shifting energy can really help us to widen our possibilities. The other thing that can be really impactful is if we are walking around with a lower energy attached or a lost soul attached to us, they will actively work to keep us at a lower vibration because that's an energetic match for them. So lost souls are literally that, they're lost. They don't know where to go. They don't know how to move on to the next aspect of their soul's journey, and they're disconnected from their own source energy. So they absolutely have to find a bit of a beacon in the dark, and they will attach to people so that they have an energetic source. But they need that person to be an energetic match. So they will do what they can to try and keep that
Yeah.
person vibrating at a lower energy. And so, how that can show up in a really practical sense is if you've got a lost soul attached, often you can feel grumpy and irritable without any reason why. You might have had a good day, but you're just annoyed at people. Someone cuts in line at the grocery store and you just feel ticked off about it,
Yeah.
and you don't really know where it's coming from. And it's because it's not necessarily coming from you. It's just a vibrational match with a lost soul who's feeling crap.
Mm,
And the other thing that often shows up if you have a lost soul attached is you'll feel quite physically cold. You might need an extra blanket on the bed because you just can't quite get warm. And that's often an indication that there's a lost soul attached for you. And it's not as scary as it sounds. It's quite easy for me to help shift lost souls and move them on. But the longer they hang around, the bigger the impact they tend to have on you.
Do you ever have like clients that have like lost souls attached to them for like years or like long durations of time?
Mm,
Yeah.
absolutely. I've had a client that was well into her late 40s who had had a lost soul attached since her very early teens. And so
Mm.
removing that for her was the biggest weight off her shoulders. I even noticed a physical shift for her. Her face looked different, and people had noticed and said to her, "You look really well. Have you lost weight? What's going on for you?" And it was literally just that she was unburdened by this lower energy.
That's so cool. That is so cool. Give me one moment. All right. For someone who's like completely new to this, right? What are the Akashic records in the simplest way you can explain them?
So, the simplest way I explain the Akashic Records is pretty much the only way I explain the Akashic Records. They're essentially a filing cabinet for your soul's information. So, we
Okay.
live lots and lots of lifetimes, and we need to store that information and those experiences somewhere, and that the Akashic Records is where we do it. So, it's your soul's filing cabinet, it's the internet of you. And the really cool thing about the Akashic Records is we can all access our Akashic Records at any moment in time. They're available to us. You may need to learn the how to, but it's always available to you. But if I tried to access your Akashic Records without your permission, they have this cool kind of password protect feature. So if I just out of curiosity wanted to know what you were up to 8 lifetimes ago, and I tried to access the Akashic Records, what I would be met with is the energy of curious. So
Yeah.
I would get really wildly incorrect information coming back to me that would just make me more curious. And I would never actually truly access your Akashic Records. So they're very useful for understanding who we are at soul level, where we draw our energy from, what our own unique gifts are, and then negative karmic patterns that we may still be upholding from lifetimes ago or from this current lifetime that's blocking our connection to our source energy. So, negative doesn't mean bad. When we're talking about
Yeah.
universal law, you've got to have equal and opposite. So, negative and positive exist in harmony. They're not value judgments. I think sometimes as people, we're prone to jump towards good and bad, and it's not good and bad. It's simply positive and negative in the same way that gravity is up and down, and one doesn't have a higher value. But when we're making sustained negative choice for who we are at soul level, it just disconnects us from who we
Yeah.
truly are.
And let's say that you're trying to access the Akashic records, right? Um, does it appear the same for everyone, or does everybody have like their own like higher self version of the Akashic records that's like that experience is unique to them?
That's such a cool question. I love that question. So, how it appears is a way that I can interpret it. So, what it is energetic information that then has to become something that I can verbally transfer to my client. So, literally, when I'm accessing the Akashic Records, I am looking through a filing cabinet to find out
Okay.
information. For other practitioners, they might be sitting at a computer and looking things up, or they might be watching a movie of that person's soul. It's really going to just be an interpretation that makes sense for the practitioner. So then they can pass on sensible information back to the client. So for me, it's always a file cabinet, but it could be vastly different for other people. The way that I work in the Akashic Records is I always ask the same set of questions. So I'm very much working to a framework, because what I don't want is fun information that's not
Yeah.
useful. So it might be really cool for me to find out that you were royalty 15 lifetimes ago, or you were a knight, or you were an adventurer. It's cool information, but how does it help you in this current lifetime? So I'm really looking for helpful information for clients.
No, I get that. And the reason I asked the how does it appear question is because, all right, like I said, I had a funny story about how I learned about the Akashic Records and my own experience with the Akashic Records. So let me let you know. So,
Yeah.
have you ever seen the show Ancient Aliens?
No, I haven't.
Really? On History Channel, never seen Ancient Aliens?
No,
So it's
no.
been running. It's been running for like almost 2 decades now. But they had this one episode where they spoke about the Akashic Records, and I got really curious about it. And at that point in time, I was doing meditation. I was working on my higher self more than than I'm working on my higher self now, I would say.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I found like this guided meditation to like try to access the Akashic records. I was like, I'm gonna try it. Let's see what happens. But I'm not really looking for that. So I do them. I'm as I'm doing the meditation, I start seeing like this long hallway, and then I
Yeah.
see, and around me is like this beautiful like maple wood walls, and it's lit up by like it's it looked super nice. I don't really know how to explain how the lighting was, but it looked like it was one of those old school wall lanterns with like a star in it.
Oh,
So
cool.
I was walking down this hallway, and then I come across these like huge wooden doors that I opened up. And then I remember turning to my left hand side and seeing like this person, but it wasn't a person. It was
Mhm.
like an energy being, and he knew my name, and he was like, "Hey, yeah, your book is on in aisle this. Go check it out. Don't touch anybody else's book, because that's not meant for you." And I named
Yeah.
him Gerald because he looked like a
Mhm.
Gerald to me. So Gerald took me over to my book, and that's where I started. Like, I read like 2 or 3 chapters where I found out that my first life I was a woman, and then in my I don't know whatever other life it was, but I was also like a blacksmith, a Japanese blacksmith, and also Indian shaman or a medicine man, somebody who dealt with herbs. But
Mhm.
throughout that experience, it was like really dope, and I was just like, "Oh, this is like really awesome." I never actually got back to that level, but that one experience I had like really opened up my eyes to like, okay, cool. So I kind of know there's something beyond the veil of my current perception, but I don't know exactly what it is. But the little bit of information I found out was so dope.
Yeah, that sounds like such a rad experience. I love that. I think the cool thing about working in the Akashic Records is it's custom made for us. So when we're working particularly with our own Akashic Records, it will come through as information that's easy for us to interpret. So the Akashic Records isn't there to kind of be mystical or confusing or anything like that. It really is about providing really quality, high level soul information.
Yeah,
So, the way that I get to the filing cabinet for people is I will visualize myself on a floor of a building, like a nice hotel.
yeah,
And I press the elevator button to go up to the fifth floor. So I'm currently on the third floor. I jump in the elevator. It's a beautiful Art Deco elevator with the old brass kind
yeah,
of dial. And so I go up to the fifth floor. And once I'm in the fifth floor, that's the filing room. And that's where I access the person's Akashic records. So yeah, this is the beauty of this kind of work. It's energetic. So energy doesn't have one particular picture of how things look. It's just how our conscious mind can interpret that. So for me, I work very intuitively. but I also test for yes or no. So I go through my set of questions that I want to find out about the particular client, and I use muscle testing to confirm. So other people may use pendulums. I don't find pendulums particularly effective for the way that I work, so I just muscle test. So, um, you know, do I have blue hair? Locked. No. Do I have pink hair today? Yes, I do. And that's how I do my testing.
Okay, that's so dope. So it
Mm.
it's amazing how energy and like when you start shifting through the higher dimensions and going beyond our current perception, how energy kind of manipulates itself to be able for us, in this 3D version, easily digestible and give us that information. I think that's so awesome.
Yeah, and it kind of has to filter from third dimensional, which is obviously our physical world, our body, all the things we can touch and feel, to our fourth dimensional aspect, which is our conscious mind, our ego, our emotions. And then our fifth dimension and above is whatever it is that makes sense for us. And so it kind of has to go through these filters to get back down to that third dimensional level. And for some people, they might not see anything at all when they're accessing the Akashic Records. They might just be hearing the Akashic Records. They might be asking yes or no questions and getting yes or no answers. So it really depends on the way that you work. I'm quite visual in the way that I work with energy. And I am quite tangible. So I really quite like to muscle test to get my yes or no answers. By the same token, I'm also listening to my intuitive knowing as well. So it's kind of working in both aspects of my best self.
No, I get that. And my experience might have just been a fluke because I have tried, you know, a few times. Not really. I'm not gonna say multiple times, but like about three or four more times after that access, and I might have once, but for like a very brief moment. But the other times it was just like straight meditation, one with self kind of thing. So it
Yeah.
was, like I said, it was a really dope experience, and that like opened up my curiosity more to it, and just like trying to figure out not how to access it, but just trying to figure out like, does everybody get this access? Can everybody learn how to access this? And you know and if everybody's access to it is unique, does that mean that the way you would learn to access it has to be unique to one as well?
No, I don't think so. I think you can absolutely learn a system to access the Akashic Records, and it's actually quite simple. It's not particularly complicated. So, as I said, for me, the way that I access them is I jump in the elevator, I go up to the fifth floor. Sometimes I might hear some music on the way. And
Okay,
then once I arrive at the fifth floor, I'm kind of looking through the file cabinet until I find your name, and then I pull out your file, and that's where I access the information. So that is all very practical, right? It's very
yeah.
grounded in a human experience. We all know what it's like to go in an elevator. I mean, young people might not know what file cabinets are, so they may be Googling. I don't know. But,
Yeah,
like whatever that representation is for you. And for you, obviously, it's a library, it's an archive in a library, which is
yeah.
awesome. Like, that's a great way. So you just pull out your own book and you start reading the chapters. And that's a great way to access the Akashic Records. I think the really important thing to learn about the Akashic Records is what information you want to find, because there's a lot in there. And so finding things about who you were in past lifetimes is really cool, but finding out what you did in those lifetimes and how it might be impacting you today, that's really powerful. So,
No, I
for
get that.
example, in your lifetime where you incarnated as a blacksmith, you might have joined, I don't know, a religious organization or a secret society or something like that where you took vows. Now, all of us at some point take vows across lifetimes. Mostly we don't uphold them, but
Yeah,
sometimes we take them seriously and we keep upholding them lifetime after lifetime. So let's say, for example, you took a vow of poverty How that might be manifesting for you now today, if you're still upholding that vow, is not that you have a low bank account, but let's say, you're walking along the street and you find $50. You put it in your pocket, you think, awesome. And then about an hour later, you break your phone and it's going to cost you $50 to replace the screen. That's how a vow of poverty shows up, right?
That's
You win $10,000 on the lottery, and then the motor goes in your car and it's going to cost you $9,999 to repair. So
oh
it's
man.
kind of the ability to create abundance for yourself is impacted by upholding that vow of poverty. So that's the kind of information that I look for in the Akashic Records, because releasing that vow of poverty is life-changing for you. If you've got a vow of poverty and you suddenly release it, money starts to flow, baby. Abundance starts to happen, which is really cool.
Yeah, I feel you on that. And when you're like accessing, do you have to go in there with like a certain intention? Like, I know you're a practitioner and you're helping people heal, but let's say like the average person who doesn't help, who's not a healer, right? Do they have to go
Yeah.
in there with like a certain intention, or like have certain things in mind so that way they could like find the answers to that and not just go all willy-nilly?
Great question. That's a perfect question to ask if someone hasn't accessed the Akashic Records before. Intention is everything, because that's how we energetically show up. And so when we're working in that energetic space of the Akashic Records, showing up with, the intention of, I don't know, I want to find out how to get rich, is probably not going to get you the results you want. The intention that you want to have is clear information. I want really clear information. I don't want anything jumbled. I don't want anything confusing. I just want to go in there with clear information, because otherwise curiosity will get the better of this. And as soon as we start with the intention of curiosity, it's reflected back to us. So we'll get really confusing information, which will just keep making us more curious. And so I would encourage anyone who wants to access their own Akashic Records, which they're absolutely free to do at any time, is to just kind of jot down a set of questions that they want answers to before they actually enter the Akashic Records, so they don't get distracted by natural human curiosity. You need to try and stay neutral and impartial when you're accessing the records.
And do you have like any tips or like steps that way a regular person could like access the Akashic records?
Yeah, for me, it is literally just going into myself and having that visualization of, I'm getting in the elevator, I'm pressing the fifth floor, I'm going up to the fifth floor, I get out, I see my file cabinet, and I'm looking for that person. And the way that I access a person's records is I need some information from them. So I need full name, I need place of birth, and I need date of birth. And that's how I can be absolutely sure that I'm not mistaking them for some other soul that has the similar name or something like that. Um, I think if you want to access your own Akashic Records, think about what that might look like for you. So if you're someone that would like to read a book or enter into a library and find a book, that might be how you start to access your own Akashic Records. Or if you're someone that, likes their tech, then, picture yourself at that fifth dimensional level on your phone looking up the Akashic Records. There is no one answer that you have to subscribe to. Think about what it might look like for you. And if you try a library and it doesn't work, then try a file cabinet. Just
Okay.
keep practicing until you figure out what works for you. What I would say is always use caution, though. I worked with a woman a few years ago, and she was actually studying to become an Akashic Records practitioner. And she did something that was probably pretty ill advised. She decided to access the Akashic Records for all of humanity. And what she wanted to do was clear all negative karmic patterns for all people. Now, that sounds really noble, right?
No, it sounds extremely
Very
ambitious.
dangerous.
It sounds
Well, it's
extremely
very
ambitious.
boundaryless because
Yeah,
what you're doing is you're taking away people's experiences. We all establish negative karmic patterns so we can learn from them.
yeah,
If we've taken a vow and we're still upholding it, we're learning something from that. We're having a human experience. She decided she wanted to end all wars. Again, sounds really, really noble, but she didn't have permission to do that. I would never access your Akashic records unless you expressly gave me your permission because there's boundaries. And so for her, that really nice intention that was probably lacking in ethics
yeah.
created some serious problems for her. And she ended up with a lot of lost souls attached to her. I mean, like rivers of lost souls attached to her.
Oh no.
So we worked together to clear those lost souls because it was starting to really deeply impact her. That was too much energy for her to be sharing amongst so many souls. And I would only agree to work with her if she promised that she would never access the Akashic records in an unsafe way again. So you're not going to do any harm to yourself accessing your own Akashic records. They're yours. You're allowed to Google
Yeah.
yourself whenever you want to, and it might be something that you practice over time, but never, ever, even if it's, I want to see what my ex-girlfriend's up to now or why she wasn't great to me in my relationship. So I should be able to access her Akashic records.
No.
It will cause problems for you, not for her.
All right. That's so interesting that a person's able to access like the entirety of humanity,
She
right?
didn't successfully do it, but that was her intention.
But it's still like mind blowing that she even attempted to do that because I thought, well, at least from like the little bit of knowledge I had, that a person can only access their personal record, right? And whatever ideas or information that may help them or is intended for them. You get what I mean? A great
Yeah,
example.
so that's true in a sense, in that you're only ever going to be able to find accurate information for yourself unless you have permission from someone else to access their Akashic records. So that's where that password protection comes into play. So I wouldn't be able to work with clients if we weren't able to access other people's Akashic records. It's just that I have to have their express permission and I have to know their full name, their place of birth, their date of birth, so that I can actually identify them correctly in the Akashic records. But we can't ever just, you know, I wonder what my fifth grade teacher is up to now.
Yeah.
And, go and kind of Google them in the Akashic records because ultimately we don't access correct information from their records, but we generally invite trouble for ourselves.
No, I get that. I get that. That's so cool.
Mm.
Like I really like you've enlightened me so much on the in this conversation, just like about my one curiosity that I had. You're amazing. Thank you. But we still got more to go though. So right, and what would you say to a person who's like very skeptical about like the Akashic records or energy work or anything like that's kind of like out there that's out of the norm? Because even though that spiritual awakening now is becoming a mainstream thing, it's going from the fringe to the mainstream, and it's because I truly feel that human society is waking up and we are maturing to the point where we're past looking at the external and looking more to the internal. So
Mm.
when a person is skeptical about all that stuff, like how would you break it down to them so that way they could kind of like not not be skeptical, but kind of like open up their mind a little bit?
Firstly, I say good. Like everyone should be a little bit skeptical.
Yeah.
We incarnated as humans with conscious awareness for a reason. It keeps us safe. Like we need to be skeptical of things. That's why we have the ability to critically think about things.
Yeah.
So anything that you do, any practitioner that you work with, any methodology that you want to explore and follow, please don't switch off the rational part of your mind. It's there to protect you. So anything that requires you to absolutely suspend your connection with common sense maybe is not for you in the first place. If someone's truly, truly skeptical and they just don't believe, it's kind of not my job to influence them. They're on their own soul's journey. And so I really believe in autonomy, and
Yeah.
people have to make their own positive choices. If someone's really interested, but they're kind of skeptical, but they're really interested, but they're still skeptical, I think just sharing information is really, really helpful. And then my belief system is that if you're doing something in that kind of woo-woo space, make sure it makes you feel woohoo. Make sure you
Right.
actually get a benefit from it. You have to be able to say, this shifted the needle for me. So there's no point having an Akashic Records reading and finding out negative karmic patterns that, you want to break, and then not doing anything with that information, because it's just kind of a parlor trick at that point. It's not really something that's helpful to you. If you have an Akashic Records reading and you find out there's some vows in there and that you kind of don't want to uphold that vow of poverty anymore, then do the work to let it go and see how life improves. And if it hasn't improved for you, then that's not the right modality for you. And that's totally okay. I don't want to kind of brainwash people and say this works for everyone. It's not necessarily for everyone. We all have different ways that we connect with our higher self. But if you're interested, keep that healthy skepticism, but also put the ideas into practice and see how they work. I've certainly had lots of clients who are like, explain how that works. I'm not sure I understand that. And we just keep sharing information until it resonates for them. And then they put the steps into practice. And that's what the proof is for them. It's not my flapping gums. It's not anything I'm saying to them. It's how has it worked for them? How has it made a shift for them? And the same is true with energy alchemy. That's exactly why I work with the higher self separate to the person in front of me, because I actually want them to independently see what that energetic shift looks for them in a very real and practical way.
No, I get that. And what I've learned, or at least the common message that I've been receiving from, like, anybody, when I talk to people like yourself and other spiritual practitioners and other people who are trying to like help people awaken, is that, one, you have to lead with love. And then the second is that this journey takes work. It's not
Yeah,
going to be
it
instant.
does.
It's not going to be, it's going to be a walk in the park. Yes, it's going to be awesome. But the work is you got to go on the journey to get to the destination. You know what I mean?
I also think, in addition to that, that it should never be earth shattering. You shouldn't have to do seismic things. So, what I will quite often say to people is, you do not have to burn down the barn and let go of the horses to break negative karmic patterns. It can come from very small, very practical steps. It shouldn't be you've got to sell everything you own and move to a monastery in Tibet to find inner peace. That's not practical. You have to be able to live practically. So, how it could look is, if, let's say, you've got a vow of sacrifice that's still showing up for you. How it could look is you're at the supermarket and you're buying pasta for dinner, and you think, "Oh, I really want nice cheese on top of my pasta." And you pick up a packet of kind of expensive cheese, and then you pick up a packet of like cheap cheese, and you want the expensive cheese. You don't really want the not expensive cheese. So you just put both back. And that's what a vow of sacrifice will make you tend to want to do. And the small shift that you make to break that vow is Sometimes you treat yourself and you put both packets of cheese in your basket and you take them both home with you. It's as simple as that. It does not have to be this big, elaborate, year-long search to let go of a vow. It's just making new informed choices. And once we know the information from the Akashic Records, because we don't have conscious awareness over choices we made in past lifetimes, once we have that conscious awareness, it's so much easier to let go of those patterns and establish new, more positive and aligned choices.
I feel you on that. And this is just out of my curiosity, right? When you find clients or people that have vows from their past lives, right? Um, how simple, or does it take like a lot of work for them to like, I don't want to say break that vow, but kind of like give it up?
Look, sometimes it can. If it's a really, really entrenched vow, sometimes it can. Or sometimes it's just having the awareness that the vow is there in the first place. So let's say someone's taken a vow of silence. They've entered a religious order and they've taken a vow of silence and they're still upholding it. How that will manifest for you in this lifetime could be that you talk a lot, but you don't really get your point across. You don't really say the thing you want to say. It's just words. Or it can look like you're having a disagreement with someone and they say something to you and you go,
And you hold back.
yeah. And so that's how a vow of silence can manifest. Once I say to someone, hey, a vow of silence showed up for you in this lifetime, they go, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And they can start to see how it's shown up for them in that lifetime, in this lifetime, I should say. So it then becomes easier to kind of loosen it and let it go. We're holding on to it because we don't have awareness that we're doing it. So once we know that there's that vow there, it becomes so much easier to act in opposition to it. So the way that we break the vow is pretty simple. We just set a new intention. So the next time you're in an argument, you kind of go, instead of and stewing on it, you go, I need to say something. What do I want to say? And you start to search your unconscious mind for the words you actually want to say. And the second you find out how to do that, that vow just drops away, just melts, because you're not upholding it anymore. Vows are only upheld when we put intention behind them. Because you think of all the people who have taken marriage vows, and they don't honor them, right? People make vows every single day.
True.
We only uphold them through our own intentions. As soon as we stop leaning into that intention and we do something opposite to it, the vow's broken. It means nothing.
Yeah, I feel you. I get that. So if there's the one final question that I ask every guest that I have on the show, and is, do you have any final thoughts or advice or message to the roomies?
Yeah. So my philosophy on all this kind of stuff is make it work for you. Okay. Please don't suspend your disbelief. Spirituality doesn't have to be some divine concept that's, others are experts in and you're not your own expert. You are your own expert. Work with other practitioners who help you know more about yourself, but always follow your own common sense, because spirituality is practical. That's why we've incarnated with a rational mind. It's really practical.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And roomies, remember, learn yourself before you wreck yourself. Peace out.